got a chance to do one thing that every team in the country can't do. We got a chance to step up, man. We got a chance to step on the ledge, you know what I mean? And to me, I think it's a free fall. To be elite, you got to think it's a free fall. That means you can't be afraid to go to the edge. And coach said, jump. You said, how far, coach? Where you want me to go? Every guy got a chance to do that today. If you're elite, grab somebody today. Take it with you. There's no more average in this program. There's no more average in this program.
The Big Ten marches out west, and we're going to see what the new look is really in the Big Ten. Is USC going to be able to come in and compete? Will Oregon indeed be atop the conference? These are big questions for those expansion teams, but they do have the good old boys. Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State are back, and they're all looking to contend for that conference crown. Hi, everybody. I am Colin Bashnagel, your host here at Bash the CFB Show. You can find all my links down below, and I've been very active on TikTok. A lot of good discussion going on over there, even with a smaller community. So I would really appreciate it if you check that out. Comment down below what you think of the Big Ten, and finally like the video if you like the video, so that way it can be posted on other people's recommended pages that love college football, so that way they can find me. So today we're talking about the Big Ten and just a little bit of a preview for it. As I kind of dove into a little bit, you have Ohio State at the top when it comes to the favorites. And Oregon comes in right next to them. And the thing about Oregon that makes them interesting is they're a good makeup of transfer portal and great recruiting, right? Great recruiting, great ads through the transfer portal, to the point where they're the only one who has the last 2 seasons had a top 5 class, I believe it is, top 10 class in both. One of those two. Either way, I heard it. So I'm not going to act like I found that stat. But regardless, you have a lot of talent at the top end for the Oregon Ducks. And you do certainly for Ohio State. But the big question is, are they going to have a tick up at the quarterback and offensive line position? That answer to come in the future for the Buckeyes as we get closer to the kickoff. But the Buckeyes haven't been able to get over the hurdle of the Michigan Wolverines the last couple of years, who are, as a matter of fact, the defending national champions. And the Michigan Wolverines had so much change in the offseason, but yet a lot of the structure and the culture is still there. So are they still going to be able to win football games the way that they were able to win them last year? Guess time will tell with that, and we'll see what my prediction says there. But then there's also Penn State, who's trying to get over a hurdle of their own. Not only have they struggled to beat Michigan, but they've also struggled to beat Ohio State. In fact, they haven't beaten Ohio State other than one time, a fateful night in 2016, since 2011, since Urban Meyer took over. So we've gone almost a decade. They've played each other every single year, even the COVID year. And Penn State's almost only won once in over a decade. They got to get over that hump for them to contend for that conference championship, and they get the Buckeyes at home this year. Some other teams I do want to watch out for, you could take a look at some sleeper teams such as USC, or how about Wisconsin? The beautiful, beautiful Badgers of Wisconsin, man. I think a lot of people are forgetting how good of a job Luke Fickell did at Cincinnati, where that program was when Luke Fickell took over, and how quickly they were able to turn it around. That difference between Cincinnati in 2017 to 2018 was wild. They're a team to watch for. Tough, hard-nosed defense with a good running back in some pretty solid wide receivers. Rutgers, an exciting quarterback over at Purdue. And Oregon, as a matter of fact, goes there the Friday night after playing Ohio State. A lot could potentially happen in the Big Ten. And you have this middle tier of teams who could surprise people and end up in that conversation at the end of the year. And then you got this bottom half of the league that, you know, you might have a better season than expected, but for the most part, your ceiling is going to be one fateful night if you're able to knock off one of those top dogs. If we take a look at the Heisman odds in the Big Ten, you're going to see that Dylan Gabriel is at the top, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country. Plus 700 odds. He was the favorite midseason after the Texas game for OU in Texas. And now he's back to the favorite in the preseason. And he's got something in common with the second place guy in the Big Ten, Will Howard, who's at plus 1,400 odds. And that is that both of these guys essentially got pushed out from their last places to make room for a younger player. Jackson Arnold over at Oklahoma for Gabriel, and then Avery Johnson over at Kansas State for Will Howard. So they're going to have a chip on their shoulder saying, hey, look, you made a mistake moving off me. And I think specifically Dylan Gabriel has a lot to say because, listen, those Sooners, they love Jackson Arnold. And they weren't necessarily the biggest fan of Dylan Gabriel. They appreciated him. They thought he was awesome. But overall, they were not mad when he hit the transfer portal. Not a single Oklahoma fan that I had talked to in these college football group chats or seen in the message boards, I didn't really see anything where Oklahoma fans were too upset. And I didn't really see anything where Kansas State fans were upset. So they're going to have to prove what Vegas is kind of telling us, that they're some of the best players in this conference. Drew Aller, a significant gap from Will Howard to Drew Aller, plus 3,100. We know who he is. 2 USC quarterbacks still battling it out. Miller Moss, the favorite, who I presume is going to be the starter at plus 4,000. But Jaden Mayava, he was an exciting player as a freshman at UNLV. There's a reason why Lincoln Riley chose him instead of bringing in Will Howard. Will Howard was about to go to USC, and they're kind of like they shied away from Will Howard. Will Howard kind of shied away from them, and then they jump in there and grab Jaden Mayava out of the portal. I think that plus 6,500 odds there. It's interesting that he's that high. I don't expect him to be the starter, but I think he would be exciting if he is. But I think Miller Moss, what he showed in the bowl game against Louisville, he's probably going to be the starter. Donovan Edwards is the first non-quarterback sitting here at plus 9,000, taking over for Blake Corum. And he had a big couple of games when he took over for an injured Blake Corum in 2022. But last year, other than the national championship game, he really didn't do that much. He had a couple of moments, especially against Penn State, but he really didn't do much. The onus is on him to prove that he can be an every down back, because I've been very critical of him. I don't know if he can do it. He's going to have to prove me wrong. Quinshon Judkins is tied for 7th place at plus 10,000 odds as one of the 2 Ohio State running backs. The other one, Travion Henderson, plus 12,000. But other guys tied with Quinshon at plus 10,000 odds is the SEC's leader all time in completions, Will Rogers. Then you get the true freshman, complete polar opposite type of situations. True freshman Dylan Raiola stepping into a situation where he's got a lot of speed out wide to work with. And then the athletic freak, Alex Orji, who's trying to prove that he can throw the football efficiently this year. So enough talking about that. We're going to get to the predictions, and you can see it immediately. Before I get into it, the win totals are down below if you want to see some of the Vegas numbers. And you can tell I love Wisconsin. All right. I want to save Wisconsin for a second. Ohio State's one loss will be to Oregon, in my opinion, on the road. I think it's going to be a really good game, potentially game of the year. I think the atmosphere, on top of the fact that they have experience and they can physically match up with one of the more physical defenses in the nation, with one of the best offensive lines in the nation. I have given a whole lot of great praise to Texas's O-line, but Oregon deserves that praise too. And then Oregon also has, the quarterback and the wide receivers out wide, the defensive line. Their secondary is going to be solid, but how good are they going to be? If Ohio State's pass game is able to exploit that secondary, that is where Ohio State can go into Eugene and make it go their way and get a big road win on that fateful Saturday, October 12th. Now, Oregon, I have them losing on the road to Wisconsin. I don't have them losing another game. But I will say with this caveat, I will talk about Wisconsin in a minute. I have said this over and over again to people. I said it in a video and I'll say it again. I believe that Oregon will beat Ohio State. I think that they will lose one of these 2 road games. Now, if they lose to Purdue, That's something I don't necessarily predict coming at this moment, but I think that they're going to lose a road game and specifically point out at Michigan and then 2 weeks later at Wisconsin. I think they're up for the defending champs. I don't think they're as much up, even if it's later in the year and Wisconsin has some hype sitting at 7-2 going into the game. I still don't think they're going to be as up for that game. And we're going to see Wisconsin really showcase why they're going to be a playoff contender this year. Let's talk about why I believe that with Wisconsin. They bring back a ton. This is maybe the best wide receiver core I have seen in Wisconsin in my life, right? What Phil Longo is doing over there, it's not going to be a situation like people keep talking about where he's moving air raid. So when people say, oh, they're not ready for the air raid, they don't exactly have the quarterback for the air raid. They're not ever running the air raid with Luke Fickell as their head coach. I'm going to make that very clear. I made that clear last year when they didn't do it, and they didn't do it. They're not doing it this year. A lot of people said, oh, they're going to throw the ball more than they run the ball. That didn't happen. And it didn't happen at North Carolina. This is the mastermind that was behind the combination of Javonte Williams and Michael Carter at UNC. I think Wisconsin loses to Alabama out of conference. I think they lose to USC early. I think they lose either at USC or versus Penn State, but I'm picking them to beat Penn State as well, and that's really when they're going to put the nation on notice. But I think they lose at USC early, so kind of working out the kinks on the offensive side of the ball. But at the end of the day, I trust in Tyler Van Dyke to showcase what he had in 2021. And we've seen a lot of guys kind of fall off a cliff like this after flashing. I think that Phil Longo is going to get the best out of him. I think he's going to be one of those players that flash early and put it all together in his 5th year. I think that's what Tyler Van Dyke's going to do, and I think that'll vault Wisconsin to beating Penn State at home, mind you, with the lack of wide receiver core too. They could beat Penn State, and their offense looks very ugly. But against Oregon, their offense needs to be figured out, and I believe their offense is going to play their best game of the year at home against what could be the number 1 team in the country. Wisconsin 1, Oregon 2. That is your championship, with Ohio State falling short at 3 with just the 1 loss. That is how the 3-way tie works, because it's pretty simple. Wisconsin beat Oregon. Oregon beat Ohio State. Penn State and Michigan tied for 4th place, I guess. And the tiebreaker does go to Penn State, but this really doesn't matter to me, because I feel like, number one, if you're talking about a debate between playoff resumes, USC, Michigan, Penn State, USC does not have the schedule, though. Beating Notre Dame out of conference will be a nice feather in their cap, considering that Michigan and Penn State didn't. But Michigan would have beat USC head-to-head. Michigan does not play Penn State, right? Michigan is going to have better losses, as people put it, but I also think they're going to win the eye test. And I think USC's success is also going to be very important to the Michigan Wolverines. And I think that if the case is there for one of these 2 teams to make the playoff, Michigan is the one that plays 3 preseason top 4 football teams. Penn State is not. And at the end of the day, I think when we get to the end of the season and Texas is as high as I predicted them in the SEC predictions, and Ohio State and Oregon are right here, Michigan is going to have somewhat of an argument to sneak in as a 10th or 11th seed in the college football playoff and end up playing an at-large team on the road. So USC, don't take it too much of a slight. 9-3, 6-3 in conference. A lot of people are questioning USC's compatibility in the conference. I think they'll be fine. Penn State, my big concern, they do not have a wide receiver core. They do not have a great offensive line. They got to show me that I'm wrong. That's why I think West Virginia is going to beat them, and Milan Pusker, they're going to wake up the nation and show and expose who Penn State is. And Penn State's going to have a good season. They're going to out-talent most of their schedule. They have a pretty favorable schedule, but those couple of games, I think they're going to get bitten by their lack of perimeter talent on the offensive side of the ball. Nebraska, they're going to have a great year too. Ahead of schedule. They were last year under Matt Rule. They're ahead of schedule this year. They have amazing speed on the perimeter, depth at running back, a fantastic defense. They got to mask a little bit of the offensive line, and Dylan Raiola is a true freshman. They're going to have some true freshman moments from Dylan Raiola, and I don't care who's going to try to praise him and anoint him. It's going to happen. And then Iowa, they're going to win on defense. I just think they're going to win less on defense, frankly, because of the fact that their schedule is just a little tougher. Like, they do have to play Oregon. They do have to play Ohio State. I think Wisconsin's a little bit better. Nebraska's a little bit better. So it's not that Iowa is falling off to the point where 10-2 is not achievable. It's the fact that their schedule's tougher, but then also they have had teams around them improve. Rutgers is going to be a solid defense, great run game. They're going to be a good team, 7-5. I would be shocked if Rutgers doesn't make a bowl game. And if you look at the ticker scrolling down below, their win-loss total, man, 5.5 wins. That's a little disrespectful for a team that had some success and competed with the top two teams in the division pretty dang well. Washington, I think their first year is going to be a little bit of a struggle. They have depth concerns for sure, but I think they're going to have flashes. Like, I think Jed Fish did a lot of the good things to really try to reload what was a magical run by Kalen DeBoer the last couple of years, but everybody's gone, and they're going to have a hard time figuring that part out. But I think, number one, the non-conference schedule, that helps them get acclimated and ready for the season. But I think they're more so gearing up for next year, and we'll see if they can be competitive in 2025. I really like Max Brosmer. I think Minnesota could potentially be a 7 or 8 win team. I just think their schedule is a little bit tougher, and they do have a little bit unproven. I need to see their offense kind of kick into that next gear that I'm hoping Max Brosmer, who I liked at the FCS level, ends up providing to Minnesota. But playing at New Hampshire, completely different than leveling up and going to Minnesota. Michigan State, they're going to be fun to watch. Jonathan Smith coming in with a mobile quarterback in Aiden Giles that he handpicked to take with him from Oregon State to Michigan State. We'll see how that works out. I like what Kurt Signetti is growing there. Indiana is going to be a dangerous, sneaky team on some of these schedules. Like Ohio State, they play them the game before Michigan. Don't be surprised if that game in the shoe is very, very close in late November. Maryland, I think that they're going to struggle a lot. I love their wide receiver core, but I think they're going to have a very average defense, and everything outside of their wide receiver core is also going to be very average, which, by the way, fits Maryland. Usually maybe they're a little bit better in some spots, but for the most part, that's what Maryland's been in the Big Ten. Purdue, they're going to be a fun, exciting offense, a little bit of a feisty team, I should say, but they're not. I don't expect them to do anything crazy this year. Northwestern, listen, I don't want to oversleep on them. They could win 7 or 8 win games just like Minnesota. But here's the thing about Northwestern that's fun. I think they lack the talent, but they don't lack the experience. They bring back the most production in this conference. Illinois, unless Brett Bielema kind of surprises me, I don't think their roster is there. 4-8, pretty struggling. And then UCLA, they got completely gutted. I think they're in an absolute mess here. Maybe they will be way better. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I think UCLA is really going to struggle in their first year in the Big Ten. Overall, that is all my predictions for you for this video in the Big Ten. A little bit of a longer one, and that's fine. I wanted to go a little bit deeper into detail with a controversial pick. This is definitely my most controversial pick. As you can see, I'm an Ohio State fan. I am not a Badger fan necessarily, but I'm really high on the Badgers, especially the more I've looked into them. With that being said, though, comment down below how much of a dummy I am for picking Wisconsin to get to the Big Ten championship and win the Big Ten regular season. And also like the video if you made it this far, because like I said earlier, it helps promote it. But with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Until next time, have a good one.